Hello everyone, and let us move ahead to the next lab, that is lab 13, how to implement Ajax using jQuery and JSON in MVC. Now when we say that we want to create an enterprise application using MVC, then you need a lot of support from other technologies as well. For example, for using Ajax, you need to have JSON and jQuery. In order to connect to database, we need to have entity framework. In one of the previous videos, I have already shown how to use entity framework. If you want to create a JavaScript view model, then we need to have Angular and Knockout. So in other words, when we say that we want to create an enterprise application using MVC, then we need support of JSON, jQuery, Angular, dependency injection, Knockout, etc. But in this video, we'll concentrate on how to implement Ajax using jQuery and JSON. Now in this video, I will not be walking through basics of JSON and jQuery. What my suggestion is to go and watch the full video series of JSON and jQuery section where we have explained these two technologies in depth. In this video, my concentration is to implement Ajax by using JSON and jQuery. So before we go ahead with JSON and jQuery, let us first try to understand what exactly is Ajax. Ajax stands for Asynchronous JavaScript and XML. So let us first try to understand this word asynchronous. Now when we look at software programs, they have a caller and they have a callee. So the caller makes a call to the callee. Now the caller and callee can be methods, it can be functions, it can be entities. So for example, we can have method 1 making a call to method 2. So method 1 becomes a caller and method 2 becomes the callee. Now the caller and callee can communicate in two modes. One is the synchronous mode and the other one is the asynchronous mode. Now let us try to understand what these words synchronous and asynchronous means. Assume for a moment that method 2 is some kind of a long running process or some kind of a huge process. Assume for a moment that method 2 or the callee method has a logic which parses files of huge size. So what will happen in that case? In that case, the following sequence of events will happen. First, method 1, that is the caller, makes a call to the method 2. Method 2 starts processing the huge file. Now this huge file processing can take 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is. And for that moment, method 1 goes in a wait mode. Now when method 2 completes its processing, method 1 resumes execution after the same. In short, method 1 waits until method 2 finishes. This kind of processing is termed as synchronous mode. While in asynchronous mode, the caller does not have to wait for the callee to complete. When the callee finishes the operation, he raises some kind of an event to the caller about his completion. Now the question is, who is the caller and who is the callee when it comes to MVC application? The caller here is the end user. The caller here is the browser from which the end user interacts with your server where your MVC application is running. So for example, in our data entry screen, the customer code data entry screen, the caller is the screen here, the HTML, the browser, and he calls the server side code, that is your controller code. Now let us assume that this customer screen is hitting a database which has a lot of customer records. So if that is a scenario, then the grid will take a lot of time to load. So what can be the side effect of such kind of a huge data? So let us try to simulate this situation. Let us try to simulate a situation on this customer screen here where you have huge amount of customer data and the grid takes a lot of time to load. So now the next question is, how do we simulate such high number of records in the tables? Do we go and load the database with 100,000 records? What should we do, right? Now if you go and load with 100,000 records, probably it won't be feasible because that would really go and fill our hard disk completely. So the best way would be, now this customer screen is it is brought up because of this enter action here. So if you remember, we had an enter action, and this enter action actually goes and fills up the customer collection by using the entity framework classes, and then gives that collection to the enter customer screen. So how about doing something like this? How about putting a delay here? So a delay, if you can put some kind of a delay here, then that delay would simulate loading large number of records, right? So what I'll do is, in order to put a delay here, I'm going to use the threading namespace. I'm going to use thread.sleep. In case you're new to threading, my suggestion would be go and see the threading questions and answers video series, where we have explained .NET threading in detail. So at this moment, to put delay, I'm going to go and use threading here, and I will put a delay of, let's say, 10 seconds. So a delay is equivalent to loading large number of records. So that would simulate, that as if we are loading large number of records, right? So the first thing what I'll do is, let me go here and import the threading namespace. So I'll say here using system.threading, right? So now let us go to the enter action. And in the enter action, I'm going to go and put here thread.sleep. Now you can see that this sleep takes in milliseconds. So 1 second is equal to 1000 milliseconds. So if you want to wait for 10 seconds, that means we have to put 10,000 milliseconds. Unit, tens, 100, 1000, 10,000. Great, nice. So let us run this application and let us try to understand what kind of experience the end user can get. Okay. So let me go and run this application. So I'll say here customer/enter. Now you can see that it is waiting for 10 seconds. You can see this small sign here indicating that the page is waiting because our grid takes 10 seconds to load, right? And there the page is loaded. In other words, the user is getting a synchronous experience. Now, won't it be great if we can give end user a asynchronous experience? Asynchronous experience means the customer entry screen loads and the user can go and type on those text boxes of customer name and customer code, and in the background the grid loading process takes place. And that's what exactly Ajax does. Ajax implements asynchronous behavior using JavaScript language. Now definitely I'm not going to use JavaScript at this moment. I'm going to use jQuery because jQuery simplifies JavaScript syntaxes. jQuery is a very nice library which sits on the top of JavaScript. Again, in case you are new to jQuery and JSON, my honest suggestion is please go and see the videos of jQuery and JSON and then come back here. So the first thing what we have to do is we have to get rid of loading this grid from the server side. It has to be loaded on the client side. So what I'm going to do here is, first thing is, let me go back to my view here. So I'm going to go to my view here, view solution explorer. So our view was enter customer.cs.html. So let us go and browse to that view very slowly. So let us go and browse to that view. So enter customer.cs.html. And in this view, the first thing is we have to get rid of that server side code, right? So you can see my view is opening. It's a bit slow. I'm so sorry for that. So first thing is I need to get rid of this, right? Great. But now if you get rid of that, right, there should be something, which will help you to display asynchronously over there, right? But the first thing is we have to get rid of that server side code, and that is done. I'm going to save this. And definitely, but still we need a table, right? We need a grid or a table or some kind of a structure here which will help you to display the grid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and create a very simple table here using HTML tables, right? And I'll tell you why I'm coming back again to HTML tables here. So I'm going to go and create a table here. Let me name this table with some name. Let me go and zoom the fonts here so that you can see it. So I'll say ID equal to TBL table, right? And I'm going to have one row here. It is going to have two columns. One column which will accommodate customer code and the other column which will accommodate customer name. So I'm going to do a Control C very quickly. C, Control V. Then I will put a customer name, right? So a customer code and a customer name. Great. So what I've done is I've created a table structure here. And my plan is the following. So the first thing is, from the server side, the complete customer collection will be sent in a JSON format. Second, that JSON format data will come to jQuery, that is to JavaScript, and he will go and manipulate this table with the data what has come from the server. Again, I will repeat, from the server side, I will write some kind of a code which will emit out JSON collection of customer data. This JSON collection of customer data will be streamed to jQuery by using HTTP protocol. And whatever data comes inside JavaScript, that means inside my jQuery library, will then be used to manipulate this table. So let us go step by step. We have already created a table. Now the next thing is we need to go and create some kind of a function on the controller which will emit out customer collection in a JSON format. In case you are new to JSON, please go and see the JSON questions and answers video series, where we have explained jQuery, JSON, Angular, Knockout in much more details. But at this moment, my concentration is to give out a collection of customer records in a JSON format. So let me go to the customer controller here. So in this customer controller, let me go and create a separate action result here. So I'll say that this action result is get customers. Okay, separate action result called as get customers. Now this action result will give me JSON collection of customers, right? And in order to go and get the customers, I'm going to go and use our entity framework class which we have created. So I'll just say Control C, I'll say Control V here. This code remains as it is. Return JSON customers call JSON request behavior allow get. So let me explain you this code. So this code says that this get customers function, it returns the customer collection in a JSON format. So what it does is it actually goes and takes data from the entity framework classes, and this data, that means the customer collection object, is then converted into a JSON format. So just to see that if this works or not, I'm going to do a Control F5 here. Now very quickly, one thing, until the browser opens, you can see that I have also put here something saying JSON request behavior allow get. So this means that the get customers action can be called via using a simple HTTP get, right? So there our browser is running. So let's go and see that at least he is actually sending out JSON or not. So the first thing what we are doing is we are trying to test that this get customers function, does it return JSON or not. So in order to invoke the get customers function, remember we should first say customer without the word controller, and we should call get customers, right? So get customers, where is it? So let me go here. So I'll say here customer slash get customers. So let us see, are we able to see the JSON format or not? So there you can see the JSON format. So JSON format starts with a curly bracket, ends with a curly bracket. So every row in JSON starts with a curly bracket and ends with a curly bracket, and it has property name and value. So you can see here that we have customer code and the value is this. Then we have customer name and the value is this. And every row is separated by a comma. So if it is a JSON collection, so in this case now it is a JSON collection, right? So it is separated by a comma and with a square bracket starting at the start and a square bracket at the end. So you can see there's a square bracket at the end, right? Again, as I've said previously also, in case you are new to JSON, my suggestion is to go and see the JSON questions and answers video series and then start over here. At this moment, I'm not going to explain JSON more in depth, but the point is JSON is a format which if you give it to a JavaScript variable, a JavaScript object will be created. So now the next thing is, now that we have the format, we need to go and write the jQuery code which will consume this format, create a JavaScript collection, and then that JavaScript collection we will bind it with the table which we have created. So the next step is we need to go and call this get customers action, get all this collection into a JavaScript variable, right? So let us again go back to the view. So let me go and quickly switch to the view here. Now again, the first thing, because we're going to use jQuery, just ensure that we have the jQuery library here. So you can see that we have imported jQuery 1.10, and that is very, very nice. Good. So let us start writing code here. So I'm going to say a script language is equal to JavaScript, and here I'll start writing the jQuery code. So remember, all the jQuery syntaxes, they start with a $sign. So what we want to do now is we want to do a HTTP GET on this get customers action here, and then we want to take all this collection, take it into a JavaScript variable, and then bind it with the table, right? So in order to make a get call in jQuery, we have to say a $.get. Again, in case you are new to jQuery, I would again suggest, so sorry, I'm repeating it again and again in the video, but again I'm suggesting please go through the jQuery video series, because in this Learn MVC section my main concentration is MVC, and the jQuery, JSON, all of these things will actually plug in to create a MVC application. So I will not be going into the basics of jQuery here, but I would suggest you to go through the jQuery questions and answers video section. But very quickly, jQuery is nothing but it's a reusable JavaScript library. It is a JavaScript library which stands on the top of JavaScript and makes your JavaScript coding much easy. Okay, so in this case we are saying here $.get, in other words, make a get call on the get customers action, right? So make a call on the get customers action. There is a second value which you pass to the get function here, string data. Now the string data here means that basically, do you want to pass some data to the controller? No, I don't want to pass anything. I'll say null. And the last one is, once you get the collection, which function do you want to call, right? So we need to provide here the callback function. So I'll give a function here called as bind data, right? So let me go and create that function here. So I'm going to say a function bind data, right? So what will happen is, once he calls this get customers action, the get customer action actually returns a JSON collection. So all that JSON collection data will come inside this bind data here in this variable customers, right? So what we'll do is we'll go and do a for loop, and inside this for loop we will go and manipulate this table here, TBL, I'm sorry. So first let me get hold of the table variable TBL is equal to $, right? So the name of the table is TBL, right? And there it is. So you can see that I have accessed the object of table inside my JavaScript variable. So here we have got a reference of the table object. Okay, and here now I will start looping through this customers collection, and I will try to go and add records to this table object. So the first thing is, let me go and use my for loop here. So you can see that I'm doing a for loop on this customers collection until the length of the customer collection length, whatever it is. So if it has 10 rows, if it has 20 rows, so until that length this for loop happens. And while this for loop is happening, what I'm doing is I am going and appending the customer code and customer name inside a tr and a td tag. So I'm creating a new row which has a table row and a table column here, right? And this row I'm going to go and add it to that table object. So here I'll say tbl.append whatever is the row. So the row is new row, new row. Now also one more thing what we need to do is we need to go and remove from this enter customer the loading of the collection, because now the loading of the collection is happening here, right? And what we'll do is we'll simulate here now a thread.sleep of 10 seconds. Okay, So you can see now what I've done is, remember we had this enter action. This enter action was populating that enter customer screen, right? So what I've done is I've removed the heavy loading from here. So what will happen is as soon as he hits over here, he will go and see the screen, and later that $.get call over here to this get customer section will actually be made by using Ajax, and he will return JSON. And because this $.get call is an asynchronous call, the end user does not have to wait until the grid is loaded. He can start entering the customer code, he can start entering the customer name, and on the background, whenever the collection comes from the server, the data will be loaded inside the grid. So if I go and run this, so let me say if I do a control F5, so now I will say here customer/enter. There it is. Now you can see here, I can go and type the customer name, I can go and type the customer code, and down below the grid data will come after 10 seconds, and there it is, you can see. So in other words, now my end user can happily go and type in these text boxes, and at the background the $.get is making a call to the server. He is getting the JSON data, everything is asynchronous, and we are having a great user experience. Also, some couple of improvements which we can make here is, now what happens is, when we go and start the screen here, the enter customer screen. So when I go and press enter, you can see now there is no message displayed here saying that the grid is loading or what. And what happens is, after 10 seconds, suddenly the data comes in. Now that is not good, right? So we would like to probably show some message here saying loading, and once the data is loaded, that loading can go off. So let me just go and create a nice div tag here. So what I'm going to do is, just above this table here, I'm going to go and create a div tag, and I will give a name to this div tag here saying ID status, right? So what will happen is, as soon as we call the get customer, or must be before the get customer gets called, what I will do here is I'm going to go and use jQuery and access this status div tag here. So I'm going to say here, okay, let us go and access this status div tag. So bracket start, double quote starts, double quote ends, and I will say status dot text, and in this I will say loading, right? So what will happen is, as soon as this page runs and before the get customers gets called, the status is set to loading, and once the data is binded, I'm going to go and say here remove the status, so just make it nothing, right? So this would give a better experience as compared to the previous one. Let us go and run this. Let us see that how it looks like. So I've done a control F5, so I will say here customer/enter. Once I do that, you can see now this loading status here, and that is good. So I can go and start using the customer name, whatever it is, and I know that the data is loading. Once the data gets loaded, you can see now that the div tag text is cleared, right? So now that this gives a better experience as compared to the previous one. Now Ajax implements two kinds of concept. First is asynchronous processing, which we just saw, and the second one is send only necessary data and receive only necessary data. Now what do I mean by that? Now let us try to monitor what kind of request and response is going from the browser to the server. So for this application, let us try to monitor what kind of request is sent from the browser to the server and what kind of response we are getting from the server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Control-Shift-I. So open your application in Google Chrome and do a Control-Shift-I. Now what is a Control-Shift-I? Control-Shift-I actually opens up the developer tools, and in the developer tools you can see that we have a network tab here. This network tab helps us to monitor what kind of request and response is coming from this application is sent from this application to the server and vice versa. Okay, now I'm going to go and make this screen bigger here. You can now see that there is one request which is seen here, this browser link. Okay, so at this moment just leave this browser link because this request is coming from somewhere else, because there must be some kind of a plugin here, right? So leave this one. You can see continuously there is a browser link request coming here. leave that, it is some external third party and that request does not belong to this screen here, right? So what I'm doing here, let me go and add some data here. Let me try to add some data. So I'll say shiv123 and CFR 4005 and let me try to hit submit. So there you can see it has hit the submit, and you can see over here, so this submit here, you can see that I've clicked on this submit at the left menu here, and here you can see he's saying headers and response. So response is nothing but what kind of data is coming from the server back to the client, that means to the browser. And this headers here, we have something called the request headers. So this request headers here tells us what kind of data is going from the browser to the server. Again I repeat, the headers tab here indicates what kind of data is going from the browser to the server, and the response here, this HTML here, is nothing but it tells that what kind of data is coming from the server to the client, that is the browser. So let us try to analyze this request and response very closely. So if you see the request, right, so what kind of data do we need to send to the server? We need to send the customer name and the customer code, right? So if you see here in the headers, you can see that there is customer data which is sent, that is customer name and customer code, and that is perfectly right? You can see there are other headers here as well, like cookie and user agent, etc. So these are technical data which needs to be sent, what kind of browser you have, what kind of environment you have. So on this we don't have really a big control, but at least on our data we have control, right? So on that part I think this is very good. Only the customer name and customer code is going to the server and nothing else. Once he clicks on submit and this data is sent, and using entity framework we insert into the SQL server, and when MVC replies back with the response, if you look at the response here, you can see now in the response what is my expectation. In the response my expectation is that I only want to see that grid data. Only the grid JSON collection data should come and not the complete HTML. You can see in the response he's loading again the complete HTML with the JavaScript libraries as well, which is definitely not good, right? So the other thing what we do in Ajax is we only send necessary data and we only receive necessary data. So in this case the only necessary data is sent, but when we receive the data we are receiving the complete HTML. So how do we go about fixing this? So we don't want to see this complete HTML again when I click on this submit. I would like to see only the collection data, that is only my grid data. So how do we go about it? So let me again go back to my code here. The main root cause why unnecessary data is coming from the server or why unnecessary data is sent from the browser to the server is because we make a full post back, because we use this submit button and because we use the method post here. So somehow first thing we need to get rid of this submit button and make a very simple button, and that simple button will take the necessary form data and make a jQuery post, means make a post by using jQuery to the server. So rather than making a full submit, a full page submit, we would like to go and use a simple button, and on the click of that button we would like to send and receive necessary data, right? So the first thing what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and remove this thing from here. So I'll say just form tag. So I'm going to make a very simple HTML form, and I'm going to go and wrap both these text boxes inside this form here. Let these text boxes be generated from the server, that is not a problem. But the problem is that if you use this submit button, then it will go and make a full page post back, which is definitely not good, right? And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make this submit button as a button and not a submit, because a submit button makes a full post back, while a button you need to write logic for making a post back. So at this moment, because we want to send only necessary data, I made it as a button. Okay, so I'll say add customer and ID equal to button BTN. So now what I'll do here is I'll say on this button click, on click of this button, on click of this button, let me call a function here called as send data. Okay, so let us go and write this JavaScript function, and inside this JavaScript function what we'll do is we'll make a $.post call. Okay, so let us give a name also to this form here. So this form I will name it as ID is equal to frm1, right? So when somebody comes and clicks on this button, the send data function of JavaScript will be called. He will use this ID frm1. By using jQuery, he will refer this, take all the data and make a $.post jQuery call to the server. So let me quickly go and create a function here called as send data, and inside this send data I will make a post call to the MVC controller, right? So the way we had done $.get call, now we have to do $.post call. Now making a $.post call is a three-step process. The first thing is we have to get a reference of the form data, right? Or get reference of the form, the HTML form. So currently our HTML form is frm1. So the first thing is we have to get the reference of the form. Second step is we need to go and serialize the data, right? So whatever is the data inside the form in the text boxes, those data have to be serialized. Again, in case you are new to serialization and deserialization, my suggestion is to go and watch the .NET fundamental section where we have explained what exactly is serialization and what exactly is deserialization. But the point here is serialization means whatever is the object, you convert that object into stream of bytes. So let us first go and do these two steps, and then we will make a $.post call, right? So I'll say var frm dollar, because we're going to use jQuery to refer to the form, get hold of frm and serialize this form object. So now once we have the serialized data inside this frm variable here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a $.post. So make a post call. Remember, we make a get call when we want to get data from a server. We make a post call when we want to send data, right? So I'm going to say, okay, make a post call. So where do you want to make a post call? So we want to make a post call. Let me quickly switch back to my controller here. So in our controller, we had this submit action, right? So I'm going to say here, okay, make a post call to the submit action, and the second thing is string data. So what kind of data we want to pass? We want to pass this serialized frm data here, and once he has inserted, what we would like to do is we would like to go and call this bind data method, right? So we would like to go and call this bind data method here. So whatever new data has been inserted, it will go and refresh the whole table and show us the binded data, right? Great. But now we have to do a couple of changes to the submit action. So our submit action here now, all these things are same, adding to the database is same, but now we don't have a concept of view model. Again, I'm repeating, we don't have a concept of view model because now the data is exchanged between the client and the server, or I'll say between the browser and the server using JSON. So there is no concept of view model. View model concept is there when you are doing things on the server side. So the first thing is there is no concept of view model. And second, which is very important here, is we are not going to return a full-blown view. So you can see here we are returning a view here called as enter customer, right? So we won't be returning a full-blown HTML view because we want to return only the customer collection, the JSON customer collection data. So the first thing is this view goes off and we are going to return a JSON result, right? So we're going to return a JSON result of customers collection. Okay. And I'll just say here JSON result behavior dot allow get. Okay. So that is the first thing. Second thing is we don't have a concept of view model anymore, right? So I'm going to just go and delete this so that our code looks much better. So this is not needed, right? So if the model state is valid, he will add to the database, and once the adding is successful, he will return a collection back to the client. And what will happen? The collection will be sent to this bind data function what we have, which we have already written, and this customer collection will then be looped by using the for loop, and the table will be created at the client side. So you can see now here, only necessary data, only necessary customer data is sent forth and back. So let me do a control F5, and there our application is running. So I'll say customer/enter. So you can see that it is loading the data in an asynchronous manner, and that is very good. Let me go and type here Koirala, KOI 908180. Okay, remember we had put some validation here, and let us click on add customer. Now once you click on add customer, this data gets added to the grid, right? So Koirala and KOI 9080, we should find it somewhere down below. Let us see. Yeah, there it is. You can see it has added successfully to the database. Nice. But again, this screen is not looking good, because what should happen is, as soon as the adding is done to the database, this text box should get cleared off. That is one thing. And second, when I click on add customer, I should see here some kind of a status saying adding customer and added successfully. Okay, so let us go and fix those aesthetic things, and then we will go and see something about the request and response which is sent from the browser to the server. So let us do the following. First thing, when I click on add customer, and if it is successful, both of these text boxes should get cleared off. Second thing, when I click on add customer, I should see here something saying adding to the database, and once it is added, we should see a message here, added successfully. So let us go step by step. So the first thing is, as soon as he clicks on the button, we will set the text here in the send data. So in the send data, I will set the text as adding, please wait. Okay, and once the data comes in, everything is posted properly, you can see that it goes and sets the text to null. So once the bind data has finished, he will set it to nothing. So that code is already there. And also the next thing is, once the submit has happened, we would like to go and set the customer code and name text box to nothing, means we would like to clear it, right? So let us go and get hold of the ID. So the ID of this text box at this moment would be customer.customer name, right? And the ID of this text box would be customer.customer code. Let us quickly go and check what kind of ID is generated, because at this moment he's using this lambda expression. So let us go and quickly go and check what kind of ID is getting generated. So I'm going to say here customer/enter. So let me do a page source here, view page source. So let us see what is the ID of the text box. Yeah, it is customer_customer name and customer_customer code, right? So we have to refer in jQuery by the ID, right? So once the send data is successful, I'll say here $# take this text box and set the text to nothing, and also the other text box what we have, that is a customer code, set that as well to nothing. Now our application will look more clean. Let us try to run this. Let me do a control F5. Let us try to see if we are getting a good user experience as compared to the previous version. So there it is. I'll say customer/enter. So I'll go and add here, let's say test me now. So test 9087. So when I click on add customer, oh, it happens fast. So there it is, test 9087. That is good. Okay, I think it is happening very fast, but it did not clear this text box here. You can see here the text box has not got cleared, right? For example, let me just go and check again. I'm going to add a new one. This is new. I'm going to click on add customer. Okay, some validations, test me new. You can see that this is not getting cleared. So something is happening bad here. So now we need to go and debug the program. So let us see how can we go and debug the program, and also it will help us to fix this error what we have, right? So let me go back again here. Now debugging a C# program inside Visual Studio is quite easy. You can just go and put a debug point here, and when you go and run your Visual Studio in a debug mode, it just comes and hits over here. But if you want to go and debug JavaScript inside Visual Studio, then we need to do a couple of things, right? So first thing is debugging inside Visual Studio. If you want to debug JavaScript inside Visual Studio, you need to ensure that you run using Internet Explorer. So that's the first thing. So if you are going to use Chrome, then the debugger will not hit inside your Visual Studio for JavaScripts. So first thing is you need to ensure that you run using Internet Explorer. And second, wherever you want to go and debug, you need to go and insert this word debugger. So I'll say debugger, right? And also I'd like to go and debug here, because what's happening is over here he's not setting the text box to nothing, right? So you can see here I've hit the debugger here as well as I've hit the debugger here. So when the end user comes and he clicks on the button, right, the button which is adding the customer, it will first come and hit the debugger here, and from here I will go step by step and we'll try to figure out the error. Second, also I would like to go and put debug on the submit here. So I'm going to go and put the debug on the submit. Great. So I have put a debugger here on the send data method, and just before you set the text to nothing, and also I have put the debugger here in the submit action, on the server side. So let us go and run this program. So I'm going to go and run this program in Internet Explorer, because JavaScript debugging inside Visual Studio is only possible when you run under Internet Explorer. So you can see that I have started running the program. So there our application is running. So we'll say our customer, enter. I will load my screen here. So you can see now the below grid is loading in asynchronous manner. Let it load at the background. We will go and put something here saying what happened. Okay, let us see why that error is, and I'll say cus 4567. Okay, so you can see here I'm typing here, and at the background my customer data is loading. Remember the delay is of 10 seconds, so it is a bit slow. There it is. Okay, so let us click on this add customer. So what should happen is, because I have put a debug point in my Visual Studio by using this word debugger here, right? As soon as I click on this add customer, it should go and hit this debugger here, right? Because this add customer actually calls this send data function here. So let us see if that happens or not. So I'm going to click on add customer. There it is. You can see the debugger has hit the send data function. Great. So let us see what happens. So I'm going to go here. It serializes the form, calls the submit, everything good, and everything is nice, but this text box does not get cleared here, right? So let us see what is the error. Oh, okay. Oh. The error is that I have written the syntax wrong. Now, if you are age of 40 and you are a developer, you would understand what I'm going through. So please accept my apology for this. Well, the error is that we need to say a .val. So .val and not .text. I've been programming from Visual Basic 6 and Power Builder, and then ASP.NET and Java. People use text. Suddenly these jQuery guys say val, right? So sometimes it is very difficult to remember the syntax. So yes, it is .val. So now things should work. So let me go and run my program again. So I'll do a Control F5. Let us see if it works or not. So there the application is running. So let us test. Koi new means Querala new, and I will say here Koi 903 add customer. Now what will happen is, because we had put that word debugger, he's saying that do you want to debug now? I'll say no, I'm not interested in debugging. I'll say no and say no, and you can see now that thing has got cleared off, and somewhere down below he must have added koi new inside the database. So where is he? There it is. Great, right? So our application is working very nice. Remember that error which popped up when I clicked on add customer is because we have the debugger points here. So if I remove this debugger points, those errors will not occur. Okay, so if I do a control F5 now, those errors should not come up. So quickly let me test it. So koi new again, right? And AGA 9097, whatever, add customer, there it is, cleared, everything nice. 9087 somewhere down below, there it is. Great, everything is working very nice. As we have said previously, Ajax has two big advantages. One is asynchronous processing, and other is it sends only necessary data and receives only necessary data. Now some minutes back, we were able to see how asynchronous processing was working, and we also saw that in live action. In the same way, we would like to see that this send and receiving of necessary data is working or not. So what we'll do is, so let us enable the Chrome developer tools and let us watch what kind of response is coming, and is that response coming as per our expectation. Because what should happen now is, whatever response comes, right, we should not see heavy HTML response coming from the server, which we saw sometimes back. So let us go and enable the Chrome developer tools. So for that we have to press Ctrl Shift I. So the time we press Ctrl Shift I, he opens up the network tab, and in this network tab we will see the request and the response. So I'm going to put here Shiv HJU8907, let's say add customer, right? Now you can see here he has added it to the database. Now remember, you can see that this Paul transport, it is not happening through our application. Actually it is happening through some plugin. So this is not our request, it is happening via some Chrome plugin. Okay, but this submit here is what exactly is the output. So I'm going to go and click here, and you can see in the response it is pure JSON. You can see that there is no HTML tags which is coming out, right? If you remember in the previous minutes, when we saw the response, it was having HTML as well, but here you can see it is pure JSON collection what is coming out. In other words, he is only sending necessary data and he's only receiving necessary data. So this improves performance, this improves the user experience as well. Now before I end this video, I would like to give a small homework here, okay, a kind of a small self-assessment which you can take for yourself. If you remember, we had two screens. One is a customer data entry screen, and there was one more screen which we created in the previous lab, that is the search screen. So in the search screen, when you put Shiv here, it actually gives you out Shiv inside the grid, right? Now the way I have enabled Ajax, jQuery, JSON in the previous screen, right, in the data entry screen, I would like you guys to go and enable Ajax on this screen. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and put this source code here, and in this source code the code of the jQuery and JSON is given, but I will not be explaining that via the video. So this is a homework for you. Try to enable Ajax, JSON, jQuery on this screen, on the search screen. So that brings us to the end of lab 13. Now this lab 13 video was almost a 1-hour video, a tiring video, but I think a very important video, because this video brings us to a stage where we can now build asynchronous, or we can say Ajax based applications using MVC, jQuery and JSON. And when we talk about enterprise applications which are built using MVC, you need to use entity framework, you need to use jQuery, you need to use JSON, Angular, Knockout, Bootstrap and so on. So just with MVC people don't build applications. Great, so we have more 11 hours pending, and with every hour we are moving towards our goal to become a true MVC professional. Now here's a small request from our side. When you complete a lab in MVC, just go and post on our Facebook account, that is facebook.com/questpond, saying that you have completed lab 12, you have completed lab 13, because with that you will come to know that how many people have watched through our video series and till what hours they have watched it, and that really helps us to boost our confidence. The way you need strength to watch all these videos, in the same way we need confidence and we need encouragement to know that what we are doing is right or not. So thank you very much, and I hope that this lab was useful, and after this we'll do lab 14. Thank you.